Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, Series 2000. This week, I'm excited to visit Return to Horrorland. I was really looking forward to this book because I was always a big fan of the original One Day at Horrorland, and had kind of forgotten there ever was a sequel. Sadly, now I know why it was seemingly forgotten. It's not very good. It's not a terrible book by any means, it definitely has its own fun moments, but Stein quickly loses track of the horror theme park theme, and it devolves into just running from random scene to random scene throughout the park, all while the kids make confusingly poor and out-of-character choices. If you skipped this one, you wouldn't be missing much. This 1999 cover is enjoyable, in the sense that it gives us an even better look at the Horrorland horror than the original did. I also like the color scheme that's heavy on the purples and greens. However, it feels like a missed opportunity to not have the horror serving a caramel apple shrunken head, which was one of the more effective scenes in the book. For merchandise this week, kinda like how there were very few international covers to look at, there was also no new Horrorland merchandise I came across. This sequel really kind of was a flop. Our front take says, "Long time, no scream," which is a play on Long Time No See. But let's check out the back of this book. "There's a food stand over there," I said, pointing. A horror leaned against a small cart. The sign on top said fingers. "Great, do you have any chicken fingers?" Luke asked the horror. She shook her head. "No, just fingers." I lowered my eyes to the cart. I saw a pile of fingers toasting inside. Human fingers. "They're pretty good with ketchup," the horror rasped. Okay, let's start this summary. The book opens with our reintroduction to Lizzie, her younger brother Luke, and Luke's BFF Clay, 6 months post One Day at Horrorland. The kids are sitting around watching TV, and Luke is being an obnoxious younger sibling, and just got done sticking his hands in the freezer and then wrapping them around Lizzie's neck. I'd like to pretend I was above this as a child, but I definitely tormented my sister in similar ways. The kids are watching one of their favorite TV shows, The Strange Report, which is a show featuring strange but true stories from all around the world. Last week, the show featured a man who could eat anything, including a car apparently, and to prove this, he ate a bicycle on live TV. This show sounds like something that would air on mid-2000s TLC, like My Strange Addiction, where people were eating couch cushions and falling in love with inanimate objects. The Strange Report actually fits too well with My Strange Addiction, because Lizzie goes on to describe a woman who had over 100 cats and gave them all tongue baths. I know I saw an episode where a woman was eating cat hair.
I'm addicted to eating cat hair. The texture is almost like a cotton candy wool. She wasn't cleaning herself, so I just started grooming her. There's no way I'm gonna stop.
The current episode of The Strange Report has a fun little Goosebumps Easter egg, because today it's featuring the one and only Evan Ross. If that name doesn't strike dread into your heart, then you need to watch more of my videos, because he's the starring menace of the Monster Blood saga. Evan is on the show, showing off a handful of monster blood, warning about the dangers of its consumption, and discussing a giant mutant hamster named Cuddles, who is probably the best thing to come out of the Monster Blood books. This book then just keeps delivering with the references, because it's noted that one of the hosts, Margot, looks a lot like Agent Scully from the X-Files. The kids are all cracking up at some video footage of Cuddles in action when their mom comes into the living room and tells them to turn off that trash TV. The kids are then in for a shock when the doorbell rings and Lizzie answers it, only to find Margot and Derek Strange, the aforementioned hosts of The Strange Report, standing on the front porch. Stein goes on to describe Derek Strange as looking like Tom Selleck, but I'm rejecting this and picturing him as Mulder for my own entertainment. This book is now a Goosebumps X-File crossover in my mind, which isn't much of a stretch because they actually had quite a few Fox Kids bumpers where they did a Goosebumps X-Files parody.
Enter the world of Goosebumps on Fox Kids.
I found it!
And investigate amazing mysteries.
Can I borrow some lunch money?
Uncover strange secrets. Encounter bizarre creatures.
Wow, a strange, spongy life form with teeth!
Search for fascinating phenomenon. And discover forces like nothing you've ever seen. Explore a gripping Goosebumps adventure this Friday afternoon on Fox Kids.
R.I.P. Goosebumps flashback shorts. Anyways, Lizzie wants to know why Margot and Derek are visiting them, which you'd think would be incredibly obvious to them all, considering they were literally in a monster-filled theme park and on a monster reality game show 6 months ago. Derek stays in X-File mode though, and makes a joke about aliens crashing into Lizzie's backyard, which doesn't land and actually freaks the kids out momentarily. Margot and Derek then go on to state what we already know. They want to interview these kids about their experience at Horrorland, and to make it exciting TV, they also want to film the kids returning to Horrorland. Naturally, the kids and their parents are not sold on this idea at all, considering they were almost killed in various ways on their previous visit to Horrorland. Margot and Derek insist they just want to expose the dangers of Horrorland and to get it shut down for good, because they've learned it's recently moved and reopened in Florida to trap more unsuspecting victims. The mom is like, it's just too dangerous for us to risk a return to Horrorland. But when Derek offers up a $10,000 check, she's like, good luck kids, have fun, because she won't be returning to Horrorland, just the children. Margot and Derek will be wearing hidden cameras while they pretend to be Lizzie, Luke, and Clay's parents. It's then decided Derek and Margot will return next Friday to pick up the kids and then fly up to Florida to return to Horrorland. The kids are filled with mixed emotions. They're scared to face Horrorland once again, but excited at the idea of being on TV. As Lizzie is watching Derek and Margot crawl back into their limousine, she notices a green tail poking out of the bottom of Derek's coat. This clearly raises some alarm for Lizzie, but when it cuts to next Friday, all of this is clunkily dismissed as a joke on Derek's part. He thought it'd be funny to wear a tail to a meeting or something. Lizzie ignores her instincts, and the kids are off to the airport with Margot and Derek. The kids are enjoying their new celebrity status in a limo, but Derek keeps making jokes that scare the kids, like when he suggests that it might make for better TV if the kids don't return. Once outside the park, the group encounters a sign featuring a Horrorland horror that is hyper-realistic and brings back all sorts of bad memories for Lizzie. But Luke is insistent on putting on a brave facade. He keeps acting like he was never scared the first time around and is super pumped to be back at Horrorland. Before entering the park, Stein stops to describe Margot and Derek's tourist disguises, and I think it warrants direct quoting because his interpretation of a tourist is something else. They were both disguised as normal tourists. Derek had a stubble of black beard on his face. He wore a loose green t-shirt pulled down over baggy red and blue checkered shorts. On his feet, Derek had brown leather sandals over black knee socks, and he had turned a blue and white Florida Marlins cap sideways on his head. He looked like a total geek. Margot's outfit was just as bad. A shiny gold tank top and black lycra bike shorts, bright red trainers with orange laces. The trainers matched the giant red plastic heart-shaped sunglasses that covered her eyes and half of her face. She had a fake tattoo of a cupid surrounded by red and blue flowers on one arm just below the shoulder. I like this look, she declared, laughing. I just might keep it. Stein really loves black lycra bike shorts. He just can't get enough of them. Stein also neglected to put the kids in disguises, but wouldn't it make sense to hide the 3 kids' identities, considering they're the only humans to successfully escape the park? They're probably Horrorland infamous. Once inside the park, they decide to check out a map, but when a passing horror notices Derek's camera, he snatches it quickly and proceeds to stomp all over it, declaring sorry, no cameras. Luckily, Derek and Margot anticipated this could happen and pull out 2 mini Super 8 cameras that fit into the palm of their hands. Luke then declares he's hungry and leads the group to a snack cart where a horror is selling fingers. Luke asks for some chicken fingers, but the horror regrets to inform him that they're only serving human fingers and reveals a pile of steaming human fingers. The horror goes on to recommend eating them with lots of ketchup. When everybody is repulsed by this, the horror chimes in that she also has toes, but they're not warm yet. The kids all scurry away, and Derek and Margot are gleeful that they got it all on film, while Clay wonders if those were actually human fingers. Does the boy not remember being in the last book? Of course they're real. While walking the maze of paths in the park, Lizzie notices a lack of no pinching signs and wonders what that could imply. I imagine the horrors will be pinch-proof in the sequel. They finally stumble across what I'm hoping will be the first ride of the book, the Mummy Walk, and gaze at a giant stone pyramid that looks ancient. Derek and Margot instruct the kids to stick close so they can capture all the footage, and the group steps into the dark, dusty pyramid. They wander around the dim chambers and admire the hieroglyphics that adorn the walls, while they wait for whatever scare is in store to reveal itself. They enter the next chamber and come across a strange triangle of light in the room, which turns out to be centered on a pile of snakes. Lizzie is frozen with fear, but Luke has lost all sense of normal human behavior and cheerfully skips over to the snakes, declaring how cool he thinks they are. He is then shocked in a chapter cliffhanger when one of the snakes pops up and bites him on the leg. Except not really, the snake missed. Luke then screams in terror, declaring he didn't think the snakes would be real, causing me to once again wonder, was this kid also not in the first book? Why is he acting brand new? He should know full well Horrorland is dangerous and his behavior is making zero sense. Derek says this chamber is too dark to get any good footage, so Margot suggests they move on in search of the mummies because she thinks the snakes must be puppets or something. They turn to leave the chamber, but are now disoriented and don't quite know which tunnel to take. They enter a new chamber featuring some stone sarcophaguses, and Lucas had his memory wiped, I guess, because he again cheerfully races over to these mummy boxes without any sense of danger. He is then disappointed when they're sealed tight with no chance of mummy action. Lizzie is trailing behind when she thinks she hears a hiss coming from one of the stone coffins, but when she listens closer, she can hear a faint voice pleading to be let out of the sarcophagus. It then becomes clear that she can hear cries coming from all of the sarcophaguses, because it's becoming apparent that these things are filled with other tourists, but Lizzie tells herself these must be voice recordings. I'm asking for a third time, were these kids not in the first book? Why are they all reacting this way? Lizzie realizes she's been left behind and races to the next chamber, where she finds Luke and Clay messing with an open sarcophagus, daring each other to crawl inside. Luke tries to get Lizzie to get in, but when she refuses like 5 times, he finally just hops in himself. Because I guess we've just decided to make Luke a full-blown idiot in the sequel. Shocker, the stone lid slams shut, sealing Luke inside. Also, Margot and Derek are nowhere to be found, so they're missing out on all the good footage. Lizzie calls out for help, and Clay angrily wants to know, is anyone running this place so they can help? Because he's forgotten all about how Horrorland works in 6 months. I'm gonna have to stop pointing out how stupid and out of character these kids are acting, because it's becoming clear it's gonna be the entire book. I might as well pretend it's their first time at Horrorland to make any of this even semi-logical. Lizzie instructs Clay to stay with the sarcophagus while she runs outside to get help from 3 passing horrors. She is then stunned when these horrors just laugh at her situation and is in literal disbelief when they won't help her get Luke out of the sarcophagus. Why would the villains of the story help you out? This is honestly way more irritating than it should be, but I can't help it. These characters aren't making any sense. She locates a convenient pile of chains and pulleys and hauls an armful back into the pyramid, where she finds Clay sitting by the sarcophagus defeated because Luke has stopped responding inside. Lizzie and Clay then proceed to set up an elaborate pulley system in a matter of minutes that effectively hooks the lid and they're able to successfully remove it. However, when they peer inside the sarcophagus, Luke is gone. Lizzie wants to find Margot and Derek for help, and Clay suggests they go get a park manager because he's been rendered stupid for the sake of the plot. Lizzie and Clay wander around the park looking for the front entrance before deciding to return to the pyramid in order to retrace their steps, where they find Luke hanging out, confused. Luke reports he fell through some sort of trap door and has been patiently waiting outside for a while now. Derek and Margot then come racing over and declare the kids are doing great. They manage to get all of that on tape, which pisses off Lizzie because while she was begging for help, Margot and Derek were lurking in the shadows filming the whole situation. Luke is all ready for the next adventure, and further establishes himself as an unlikable character by grabbing Clay's glasses and smudging them all up on purpose, shouting, "Pretend it's a foggy day," for no reason. They all wander further into the park before reaching Happy Tooth Game, featuring a giant grinning molar. Clay thinks this one can't be so bad, whereas I'm like, tooth body horror is something that effectively grosses me out. There's even a scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie's pulling out his own teeth that manages to make my skin crawl when I think about it.
1, 2. Wait, that just kind of came out on its own.
Yeah, that slipped right out, huh?
I barely pulled that.
Whoa.
I barely pulled it. What?
Damn, dude. That's another.
Man, you should really brush your teeth more because that is not normal.
Oh, Charlie, stop pulling your teeth out
They're
like
just
that, man.
coming right
It's
out.
freaking me out.
Stein then loses track of the horror theme park book theme, and then the kids are suddenly in a horror-run dentist office. Why would this be in a theme park? The horror in a nurse's uniform asks if they have an appointment, which they of course don't, and is like, "No worries, we have plenty of dentists." The horror then proceeds to lead the kids past rows of dental chairs, each filled with a screaming child getting their teeth drilled. How is this a ride? Who would sit down in one of these chairs and be like, "Yeah, I want my teeth cleaned at 6 Flags"? There are multiple kids screaming about how much pain they're in as the dentists berate them and drill their teeth. It would be a horrifying scene, but I'm still stuck on this being located in a theme park. Also, these dentists aren't even horrors, they're some different breed of monster. They all had hairy, dripping snouts, yellow fangs curled out from blubbery purple mouths, pointed ears poked up from thick black fur that tumbled down over their round, glowing eyes. They gripped their drills in huge hairy paws, lowered their bulky bodies over the screaming, helpless patients. The kids turn to leave but find the door is locked and they can't escape. Next to them, some girl is sobbing how they broke all of her teeth, and another kid is refusing to open their mouth, so the monster dentist just threatens to drill right through his closed lips. Lizzie is strapped into a dental chair and notices a spit sink next to her is stained with dried blood. Her dentist then announces he'll be drilling various holes in all of her teeth. If a kid wasn't afraid of the dentist before this book, they will be now. Good Lord, Stein. Lizzie is able to wiggle her hands free enough to punch the dentist in the chest, where she learns he's some kind of wooden robot. She snatches the dentist by the snout and twists, which powers it down. She then breaks free of her chair and is able to rescue Luke and Clay by breaking their robot dentist too. Luke of course pretends he knew it was fake all along, even though he was about to have his lips drilled through. Margot and Derek pop out of their hiding place behind some curtains and once again tell the kids they did a great job and how they got it all on film. Derek then changes his mind and is suddenly unhappy because he thinks the other screaming kids must have been robots too, and they need some actual footage of some real life or death situations. Margot then suggests they stick the kids on the lift shaft ride, World's Fastest Freefall, which is clearly a Tower of Terror knockoff. Side note, the book I'm reading is actually the UK version, so I'm assuming the US version would call this elevator freefall or something along those lines. Clay suggests they get something to eat instead, and Luke offers him a knuckle sandwich because we're really committed to making Luke unpleasant. They stop a passing food cart that's serving toffee heads, and on closer inspection, Lizzie can see rows of caramel-covered shrunken heads. Through the thick caramel, she sees one of the heads open its mouth and squeak out, "Help me," which sends all the kids scattering. Margot and Derek are missing again, and Luke takes off running. I'd let his ass just get lost at this point. Good luck. Clay's my brother now, shithead. They hurry past Dracula's castle, a buzzing insect garden, and the coffin cruise that they rode last time they visited. Soon, they're walking along a dark wooded path next to an enormous stone wall, with Luke refusing to slow down. Luke is walking backwards, blabbering away and being annoying when he crashes into a giant horror. They try to apologize and explain that they're lost, but 2 other horrors appear and fling a net over the group of kids. They're then dragged into a hole in the stone wall, down some stairs, and are thrown at the feet of the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master is like the rest of the horrors, except he's wearing a creepy black mask and says he's thrilled to finally have some company down here in the Dungeon of No Return. The kids are then led deeper into this dungeon, down wet, mossy stairs, while Lizzie wonders if Margot and Derek are lurking around, recording the whole situation. They finally enter a large room that would be right at home at a Night in Terror tower that's full of all sorts of medieval-looking torture devices. The Dungeon Master then proudly shows off his collection of thumb screws and explains how they work, in case the name wasn't self-explanatory enough. Throughout the torture chamber, they can hear screams of pain, and again it's unsettling, but what does the torture chamber have to do with the theme park theme? It's then decided these kids haven't spent enough time walking around, so they're all placed onto a trapdoor and lowered even deeper into this torture chamber. This quickly gets full on silly though, because they're lowered into, wait for it, a room full of hungry ferrets. I guess Stein got tired of slandering rats, so he decided to go after ferrets for a bit. The kids are pushed off the platform and then pinned to a wall as a mass of hungry ferrets approaches them. The ferrets suddenly attack the kids, and I like to imagine one ferret leading the charge as a fearless general. We then have a couple pages of the kids swirling around in a mass of angry biting ferrets before Lizzie accidentally bumps a button on the stone wall that causes the wall to spin around with the kids against it, like a secret passage in Scooby-Doo would. The kids are now outside the stone wall in the woods from earlier. You can hear all the ferrets scratching on the other side. Lizzie and Clay have had enough of Horrorland and want to leave Margot and Derek behind. They no longer care about being on TV and just want to be free of this place. We then get some more Goosebumps Easter eggs because Luke suddenly spots a sign for Amazo's magic act, and Lizzie reminds the reader that Amazo is a world-famous magician in the Goosebumps universe, last seen in Bad Hair Day, and occasionally performs at Disney World in our universe.
Amazo the Magician! Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the illustrious Goosebumps sideshow of magic and mayhem.
Lizzie agrees to watch Amazo's act because she feels safer in a crowd of other human guests and thinks maybe Margot and Derek will be able to find them there. Amazo starts his show and gives us some highlights from Bad Hair Day, where he proceeds to pull out endless red balls from his magic hat, along with a never-ending supply of rabbits and pigeons. Lizzie is impressed, but has other things on her mind, like locating Margot and Derek so they can leave. While zoning out, she is suddenly summoned by Amazo to appear on stage, and because these kids never learn, she goes up willingly. Once on stage, she learns she'll be performing in a tiger cage trick, where she's thrown into a cage with 2 hungry tigers, and Amazo will make the tigers disappear. Before shoving her in, Amazo warns her to be brave, because the tigers can smell fear. But Lizzie isn't feeling particularly brave given the day she's had so far. Lizzie is then face to face with 2 tigers before being plunged into darkness, as Amazo covers the cage with his magic cloth. She can feel the tigers breathing on her and is pressed tightly against the cage door, begging for Amazo to let her out, when she hears him suddenly start screaming that something has gone wrong with the trick. Lizzie drops to the floor waiting to be eaten, but when she opens her eyes, the tigers are gone, and the audience is applauding. Amazo then leaves the stage as the audience clears out, leaving Lizzie still stuck in the cage. She can't see Luke or Clay anywhere and is left sitting in the cage before a horror stops by to clean up the auditorium. He tells Lizzie to get out, the show's over, and she's like, I can't, I'm locked in. But it turns out the cage door can slide right on open. She leaves the auditorium and can't find the boys anywhere, so she starts thinking something must be wrong. She runs aimlessly for a bit before concluding the boys ran into Margot and Derek, and maybe they're all waiting for her at the front entrance. It's getting late and the park is getting more deserted as Lizzie runs through a maze of paths, but eventually stumbles across the entrance and spots Margot and Derek. Unfortunately, she arrives just in time to watch a group of Horrorland horrors snatch their tiny cameras, stomp them to bits, and then toss Margot and Derek out of the park. Lizzie approaches the pack of horrors, and they attempt to toss her out too, as she begs for them to let her go because she still needs to find Luke and Clay. She's able to break free of the horror's grasp, and Lizzie is really getting her cardio in for the day, because once again she's off running through this maze of trails for a few pages. This time though, the horrors have declared a red alert, so she's having to dodge all the horrors as she attempts to locate the boys. She passes by Vulture Beach, and hears the familiar screams of Luke and Clay. She sneaks out onto the beach where she comes across the boys chained down on their backs as hungry vultures swoop and circle overhead. It's feeling a bit like a Prometheus situation here. Lizzie starts freeing the boys from their chains, but the vultures decide now's the time to attack, resulting in Lizzie spending a couple pages punching birds and throwing sand at them. Throughout this, Luke is screaming how the birds are trying to peck out his eyes. In the end, the sand attacks seem to be the most effective, and Lizzie is able to free the boys, but there sure was a lot of bird attack action going on there. As they're leaving the beach, they realize they're actually surrounded by horrors descending on them from both ends of the beach, so they take off into the wooded path and end up trying to hide in an alley, but then are trapped there too, as more horrors move in on them. Lizzie then has an idea and pulls open a side door to a gift shop, where the kids then quickly put on some Horrorland horror costumes. Luke has his doubts that this will work, and they immediately have to put the costumes to the test when they run into a group of horrors right outside the gift shop. They're able to convince the actual horrors that they're looking for the 3 runaway kids, and successfully make their way back to the front entrance. Lizzie marches right up to the entrance guard and tells him she's there to cover his break, and it works. 3 kids make it out of Horrorland and are into the parking lot. They just have to locate Margot and Derek now. The car they arrived in is nowhere to be found, so they decide to start walking down the road in hopes of finding a gas station or something so they can call their parents for help. While walking, a van pulls up on them quietly. Lucky for the kids, it's not a creeper van, just Margot and Derek. Everyone's like, yay, we're rescued, it's a happy ending. But there's still like 15 pages left, so of course Derek suddenly locks the doors and drives the kids right back to Horrorland, where they're promptly yanked out of the van by a pack of horrors. Lizzie then watches as a horror hands Derek a big stack of cash, because Margot and Derek were in on it the whole time. Once they discovered the kids were willing to share their Horrorland experience with the world and expose the truth, they had to be stopped. Margot and Derek hop back in the van with all their cash and peel out of there, leaving the kids to wonder what's going to happen next. One of the horrors reveals the kids will be testing out a new attraction and poised to a tall mountain called the Final Leap. The kids and a handful of horrors all load onto a gondola ride up the mountainside and are then marched up to a cliff where they'll be taking their final leap. Lizzie peeks over the edge and regrets it as she spots a mild drop of sharp rocks at the bottom. The horrors wait patiently for a few minutes for the kids to jump, but when it becomes clear that the kids won't be jumping of their own volition, one of the horrors pulls a lever and the cliffside starts to dissolve in front of them. This apparently is a very slow process because as the kids are waiting for the earth to give way at their feet, some more horrors appear and switch out the current horrors. This new set of horrors then says they have their own plans for the kids and yank them off the dissolving cliffside. These new horrors lead the kids down the mountainside and into an employee-only area, where they all pile into a car and drive away from Horrorland. The kids are very confused but cooperative throughout all of this. In the car, these new horrors pull off their masks and reveal they're reporters for a show called Weird Copy and have been filming the kids all day. The reporters inform the kids on what they should already know, that torturing humans is a sport to the horrors, and Horrorland was designed for solely that purpose. The reporter goes on to say they have plans to expose the dangers of Horrorland to the entire world. Margot and Derek will be arrested, and Horrorland will be shut down forever. But this is the last page, so we have to have our final page twist, because the reporter goes on to say they'll need to stop and get a few more exciting moments for the show before they take the kids home. Lizzie then looks out the car window and sees they're pulling up past a giant sign that reads, "Welcome to Terrorville." So that's how this rambling, random book ends, with the kids off to another theme park. Overall, I thought Return to Horrorland was a pretty disappointing sequel. I appreciated that Stein attempted some sense of a continuous story, unlike in the Living Dummy books, but it kind of felt like he was given an assignment to revisit Horrorland due to the book's popularity, without any solid ideas to justify it. I had a hard time accepting how out of character and stupid these kids were this time around. They all acted like this was their first time dealing with the Horrorland horrors, and the plot quickly fell into just running from scene to scene. I don't think we've had this much running around since A Night in Terror Tower. I was getting tired just summarizing it. I did think the scene in the dentist office was some effective body horror, but I don't think it belonged in a book centered on theme park horror. I'm going to give this one 2 out of 5 caramel apples. This book lost some extra points for tarnishing something I enjoyed so much the first time around. As far as the vomit count goes, we're once again staying steady with no new vomits. This leaves our Series 2000 total at 11. Well, that's it for Return to Horrorland. This book was not a very good time, and I felt myself just wanting it to be over with. Next week is Jekyll and Heidi, and I'm curious to see where Stein will go with a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde parody. I have heard murmurings of it not being great though. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Return to Horrorland. Am I being too hard on it? What Horrorland ride would you like to see? Would you eat a caramel apple head? Also, what did you think of my theme park horror clips this week? I came close to just putting in random scenes of horror, dentists, mummies, and birds, but thought better of it. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,